Okay, everyone to their seats, please. We have a motion to reconvene. Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Peary.
Call the vote.
I'll call the vote. Yes, we have 2/3.
Okay. Carried.
It's carried. So we have a second delegation, Mr. Simonoskis, Director of Infrastructure and Environmental Sciences, for item 4, report number IES 15-039, Facilities Project Status Report. Mr. Simonoskis, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. I just have a brief presentation for you with regards to report number 4 on the agenda. This one's on Joint Operations Center, that report being a facilities status report. And what I want to show you here actually is a slideshow stop action recording of the construction. So if Lindy can start the video. Just gives you a sense of the progress we've made since construction started in late October. And in addition to this sort of single-shot photograph that we're doing, we're also having the streaming going on live, which is available on our website as well. We've sped it up for tonight's presentation, but it can be adjusted to... So there we go. Just a brief status on where we are. And for those members who were able to join us tonight for the tour, we did walk around the facility, the building, and the site. And if there's any desire to do so again later on in the year, I'd be happy to facilitate another tour of the facility and see exactly how the progress is proceeding. This is the schedule that's in the current report, and basically just an update as to our progress. The contract has been moving very well with regards to the construction of the building, as well as the site earthworks. One of the bigger challenges this spring was the construction of the retaining wall along the north face of the site. There were some concerns with the spring thaw and potential issues with soils. However, all of that was avoided in a large part actually with the support from our project manager that we brought in February. Right now we are standing at about 45% spent on the project, and we're probably very close to 45% with the schedule. Just looking quickly with the building completion date, early 2016, and a move-in date of March, and all that is still on track. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of detail with regards to a recommendation we have in the council report tonight pertaining to the retaining of our project manager through the MHPM Project Leaders company. And this was a motion that was approved in February 2015, where we had requested funding for a 6-month assignment to bring the PM on site and support the project, to allow us to also manage other administrative responsibilities that we as staff have. I have to say this has been a very effective process. The PM has been very instrumental in overseeing details of the project that we as staff would have had to be involved in, and frankly I don't see how we could have done the amount of work and effort that he has done. And he also brings with him and the company a huge amount of experience. So it has been a very effective assignment, and it has resulted in some cost avoidance as well as some savings. In particular, and detailed in the report, I make note of 2 particular instances where during the February-March period, when we were looking at construction of the north retaining wall, the contractor had some concerns with potential soil conditions. However, with detailed review that was being led by the project manager, we were able to avoid what they were perceiving as a potential plume of upwards of $300,000. And the second opportunity where they've identified some savings is with the initial soils issues that we're dealing with in October, November of last year, where we are standing at a potential reduction in change orders of about $250,000. So those 2 items alone, with I have to say a lot of effort from the team, have made this decision well worth it. And what we're hoping for tonight is a recommendation in the report is to actually extend that contract to the end of the actual project construction period. We've identified the total budget required for that of about $129,800, which is also detailed in the report. I'm done.
And just to refresh you on some of the project financials and where we're at, give you an update. The total approved budget is $20,385,000, and that includes the contingency provisions. We understand from the budget process that as a capital project begins in the visionary stage, we have a rough budget, we call it a Class D, and then it gets closer and closer. And now that once the tender is awarded, we finalize the budget before construction actually starts on the field. And so we're settled in at $20,385,000. That was to be funded from development charges, $11,900,000, and sale of lands, $8.4 million. The interim financing by debt financing is with Infrastructure Ontario. It's currently running at 1.56% interest on an annual basis, and it's variable by month. Where are we at from a spend perspective? So this is a more graphical presentation of the same information. The budget on the left, $20 million. The final funding is showing there is development charges $11 million, sale of land is $8 million, and the debt approval is up to the full budget amount of $20 million in the event that we had no inflow of DCs or sale of land. So where are we at? The financials we have spent at the end of May, I've written checks for just over $8 million, 40% of the budget. We have funded to date that by $3.5 million in DCs that we have collected towards this project. I have no land sales, although there was one during June, a small one. And so the balance of that is through the construction line of credit. We just received on this yesterday $4.71 million from Infrastructure Ontario as our first advance on the construction line of credit. The $2,500 is rounding it, a wait till the next time we make a draw. And so that's where we're at on the project financials. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on those. Or Ilmar.
Thank you. May I have a motion to receive the delegation? Councillor Marcus, Councillor Gardner. Any questions or comments? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Elliott. Dan, you indicated that so far we've collected $3.5 million to date. Mr. Simonauskas indicated that, the project should be ready to move in about March 2016. Where do you think development charges will be around that time when the project's finished? If we're at 3.5 now, what do you forecast that we'll collect in DCs between now and that March 2016 date?
Quite honestly, I haven't looked at that forecast at this point in time. We were just looking today as to how long after construction completion we have before we have to determine our long-term debt financing arrangement, and that's 120 days. But as to what we're going to collect, I think we're going to be about 3/4 of the way by the time we finish. And the sale of land, as we all know, is difficult to predict. We've got a couple in the hopper. We know there's a few others kicking tires, but and we've got the $3.3 million somewhat value from the sale of Scanlon that will close shortly after we move out. So I think we're going to be in good shape. But until the project ends and the development in 2C continues throughout the summer, I haven't got a forecast for you.
I didn't ask because we certainly hear that development is moving steadily in the 2C lands, and so it's good to hear that you see the majority of it at least being collected prior to the completion date. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Elliott, when you say the development charges collected $3.5 million, are those is that the amount collected from the 2C development that was dedicated to go towards this project? Or is that the total of the DCs that have been collected?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's only the portion that has been dedicated in the DC background study, both past, present, and future. And so it's there's about $2.7 million from the previous, up until April of 2014. And since 2014, about $1 million has been collected towards that specific project. It's only a small portion of the engineering portion of our DC and a small portion of our parks portion. It's not the whole DC, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor to receive?
And refer.
Sorry?
And refer item 4.
And refer item 4. Opposed? Carries. Thank you. So we have 2 advisory committee meeting minutes on tonight's agenda. Do the chairs have any presentations this evening? No? Okay. In the audience, if there are any particular items that you wish to hear first, please let us know. If not, then we need a mover and a seconder to put...
Call item 1.
Yes, no, let's start with item 1 by Councillor Gardner. Would you like to put that on the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I will.
A second. Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. I was glad to read the report, and thank you, Ms. Arnoon. And it was looking pretty bad over there, and now it does look a lot better. Is this something that could stay in place indefinitely? Or maybe, I don't know, maybe also the question to Mr. Muno is what are we expecting as far as timelines for this project? And are they allowed to leave it at like this for as long as they want?
Mr. Muno? Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the building is unoccupied, so provided that they keep the building maintained to a certain status, and it doesn't fall into disrepair to the point where it would require a demolition, it can remain as is, as a vacant building.
Thank you. And then as the second part of the follow-up to Mr. Muno, do we have any idea on the timeline for this? It was approved by council. I think it was approved by the council. I'm not sure if it was the last council or the council before that. So it has been a while.
So through Mr. Chair, Councilor Gardner, the Howard Johnson's Hotel, I mean, is your question the...
No. I'm thinking, thank you. No. I was thinking about another project. Thank you. So then do we have any more information as to what is going to be happening with that? Does anybody have any information as to what's going to be happening with that?
Through Mr. Chair, regarding Howard Johnson Hotel, we've been attempting to try and meet with the owners, and as of date, we haven't been successful, but we are trying to sit down and meet with the owners to see what their plans are with the property in the building.
Mr. Chair, if you would permit a follow-up. So as a town, we just can sit and wait for those owners to decide what they want to do with that building indefinitely? Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Muno.
Through Mr. Chair, yes, unfortunately, it's been vacant for some time. We have been attempting to contact the owner to sit down with him just to understand what if any plans he has with it. But as long as the building is safe and secure, and Taysha can add, it's been sitting vacant for some time, and I'm not sure how long it's going to continue to sit vacant.
And there's nothing we can do about it. And my apology, Mr. Mayor, you looked at me kind of strange there, and I understand why. I was thinking about the development that's just north of Dollarama for a second, because that was looking pretty bad, too.
Councillor Rubel and then Mayor Daw. No?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was answered.
Okay. Mayor Daw?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is just to confirm Mr. Ramuno's
point with respect to getting in touch with the owners of the Howard Johnson. The Conservation Authority has also been trying to track down the owners for some issues that they have been dealing with that piece of property, and they are having an equally difficult time tracking them down. So it's unfortunate, and I know the Conservation Authority is certainly working diligently to track these folks down and get some of those issues cleared up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They were really hard to track when it was still operating as the Howard Johnsons.
Councillor Thompson and Councillor Mattis.
Through to Ms. Van Loon. Ms. Van Loon, how frequently do bylaw go by and observe the property? The reason I ask is that you hear different things from residents. Once in a while I hear that there's some auto repair work being done in the back, or different kind of rumors, and I just want to get a sense of how frequently we're monitoring the property.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've been attending the property approximately once every 2 weeks. We did recently attend the property as we had received some concerns of equipment and some auto repair as well. As I've mentioned in my memo, there is a maintenance man who attends the site, and at the time he was securing the underground garage, some areas within the underground garage, so I'm unclear as to whether or not it could have been just construction equipment or small machinery to do those types of repairs.
Councillor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Councillor Thompson asked my question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so if there are no further comments, I'll put this to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries, Mr. Clerk. We'll move on to item 3, that was pulled by Councillor Pure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the staff recommendation.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Tom.
I actually thought this one was important to pull. I wanted Mr. Elliott's opinion. Is he happy with this? I know we're going to be going through this in a more robust manner, but I just wanted to know, is this something that Mr. Elliott is happy with? Just some general comments on that, because I think it's a very important document to review.
Mr. Elliott, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this report is similar in nature to last year's, in that we're reporting a surplus, but when one looks beyond that and examines the table on page 2 of the report, or consecutive 12, you'll see that there's $1,200,000 of call it fortuitous or unplanned revenues that more or less bailed us out of what would otherwise have ended the year in a deficit. And so that is concerning to me. And then going into the 2015 budget, we saw some substantive budget reductions in that budget. And so it does not bode well necessarily if we're still on a similar track for this year, although we do know, of course, because of the supplementary revenues, that we're going to have some of those fortuitous revenues again. We're doing that deliberately in our budget process because we know it's not a sustainable revenue source. So I am concerned that it appears our operating budget expenditures, the expenditure budgets, are beginning to be very, very tight, if not quite sufficient enough to operate the municipality in the manner in which we're used to having it run and operated. And so despite the efforts of my colleagues around the table in trying to constrain our expenditures and trying hard to stick to budgets, we have things like snow events, weather events. We have things like facility emergency repairs that climb up on us and sneak up on us. And so these are all things, and they add up together. And fortunately, we're able to end the year in a black ink scenario. But if it weren't for those fortuitous revenues, we'd be in the red. And so it's concerning to me. We have to be careful. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Following up on that comment through to Mr. Elliott, and for those on page 3, it does mention about the fortuitous revenues, but the next paragraph speaks to the fact that, expenditures were 5% over budget, nearly $2.7 million greater than we had originally budgeted, but yet, when I look at the attachments, it isn't really clear where those increases in expenditures came from. Can you speak a little bit to why we were $2.7 million over on our spending?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I haven't got all the details in front of me, and I'll have to consult with my group and see if we can't come up with a slightly different format for the report. When I turn over to the attachment one, looking at it every time you see something different, but this column headings should say net adjusted budget and net actual results as opposed to expenditures. The discussion on the commentary is that just focusing on expenditures, we were indeed 5% over budget on our expenditures total across the board. Exactly where some of those are highlighted in the table on the left, and others have been netted up against matching revenues or alternating savings in other areas. So I'll take a look and see if we can't come up with a little bit more detailed report that will show that. But we do want to keep the level of detail of this report very high.
And I understand that and appreciate it, but I think it would be helpful for me and perhaps other members of council to get a sense of where that $2.7 million lies. And I guess, as a follow-up to that, I'm not comfortable with relying on fortuitous revenues coming in. And so, is our financial system capable of reporting to us on a quarterly or semi-annual basis to give us a better sense of where we stand, both from a revenue and an expenditure side? Because, a couple times now we've seen these reports at the end of the year get all rolled up, and I think it would be helpful for members of council, at least for myself, to have more current, up-to-date information as we progress throughout the year, and that way decisions can be at least discussed or determined. It's certainly something I'm very familiar with, in the private sector with different companies, and so, I'm not sure if it's a failing in our system or it's just how we've always done things. Can you speak to about giving us interim financial reports?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've been looking at our processes, and actually we're just in the process now of calling out for our first operating forecast as at the end of May, which is our traditional cutoff point. It gets us sort of through the winter, through the budget process and year end, and allows my staff now to focus on producing that forecast. So we'll be doing that. We're also going to try to treat that as a month end formally. We normally don't close our books every month, and so we're not making accruals and investment income accruals every time. So we're going to be seeing if we can change our accounting processes to keep up and make those far more relevant if we can, so that we can diminish the variance between our last forecast and the actuals like this. I do know that the day that we put in the report for the last forecast last fall in, I think it was October, November, the next day we received the input or the information about the GST rebate, and you go, oh, there's a big variance right there, and it just happens to be the next day, but stuff happens every day, and it's difficult.
I agree. I think it's just a matter of being able to identify it early on, and if further cuts need or whatever, I just want to get away from having to rely on fortuitous events.
Anyone else? When I saw this budget report, it kind of reminded me of Groundhog Day, or seems to come up all again and again, or felt like kind of Michael Corleone in Godfather 3, just when you try to get back out, it kind of drags you back in. But, I immediately to a question, but I have a comment in that, I go to church, and I've been to several churches, and you'll see in the bulletin a budget and where we are relative to plan, and almost always what's been collected thus far is several thousand short of the plan. And then you get to November and December 15th, 25th, and you think, geez, that gap going to ever close? And sure enough, come middle of January, they beat it by 5-10%, a lot of faith giving, and And what does that have to do with this budget? And I think that, unlike a church budget that depends on a lot of faith, we need great stewardship in the municipality. And when I see that there's a 5.1% or $2.7 million shortfall in the 2014 report, and I saw in the 2013 report that there was a similar 5.3% shortfall, it's not a one-off incident. And I know that we have the Finance Advisory Committee, and we're going to move to a multi-year budget where we can smooth things out, but smooth things out can be a positive thing when you amortize, capital equipment and so forth over 5 years. But it can also be, if not greatly scrutinized, it could be a great way of just putting things under the carpet and hiding shortfalls year after year after year. And so I just hope, and I trust that with our newly formed Finance Advisory Committee, we're going to have to go perhaps line by line, and form that baseline to ensure that we don't have the excesses that we could, or shortfalls that we can amortize over 5 years, and we have another shortfall. So just a comment that we just need to do a better job going forward, and especially as we're going through a multi-year budget, it's not going to be the cure-all for anything. We still have to do the initial detailed work and go from there. So thank you, Mr. Elliott, for the report. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, then we'll call the vote. All in favor of the report? Opposed? Okay, that carries. Next item would be item 4 by Mayor Daw.
I'll move the staff recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Okay, a second. Councillor Tom.
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Mr. Simonowski's presentation, and I just wanted to point out that I know that there was some concern when Mr. Simonowskis originally brought forward the concept of the project manager for the Operations Center, and I think his report has proved that it's been a valuable experience, and I certainly support the whole concept going forward, and I just wanted to make that quick comment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other speakers? Okay, if not, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries, Mr. Clerk. Okay, next item will be item 7, and that was brought forward by Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Like to put that up?
Thank you. Move the staff recommendation as is.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I have a question about the second paragraph on page 2. And then going down into comments, benefits of Aurora's green energy. I can't seem to figure this out through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Simonowskis. So perhaps you could just go over the cost benefits again.
Mr. Simonowskis? I'm sorry, Mr. Romino?
Mr. Romino.
Would you like to repeat the question? Or?
So through you, Mr. Chair, so if we're talking about generating, under comments, middle paragraph, we're talking about generating $42,000 per year over 20 years. I just don't understand the figures. If you could help me, please.
Mr. Chair, maybe I can clarify. The second paragraph speaks to the two solar panels on the town hall and the library are projected to earn about $6,000 per year each. Under the comment section, the $42,000 per year figure, that really speaks to the three projects once these SARC solar panels are installed. That is the anticipated revenue expected per year. 42,000 for the three. Now the SARC panels aren't installed yet. Hopefully they'll be installed by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. That makes more sense to me. Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so put that to a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries. Next item is item 11 by Councillor Tom.
I won't be able to move the staff recommendation. Can someone put it on the floor?
Okay. Second, Councillor Marcus. Would anyone like to speak to that? Councillor Tom?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. We spoke about this during the capital budget process, and as I recall, this report is kind of reporting back to council on some of the more information that we were looking for, and this through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Downey. This is your report, I believe, right? And one of the things that I don't think is in here, and I was looking for, and I'm not sure if we discussed this when we were going through the budget process, but I know we talked about, at least I remember talking about, replacing the fence that's currently there, but I believe through the attachments, we only have costing for chain link fence. So, I mean, I was hoping to get some of that information as well before making a decision on this, so I'm not sure if you could comment on that.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you're correct. That's exactly the conversation that we had. And I had the conversation with Mr. Tree with regards to that. A couple of issues with regards to replacing the existing fencing, and the reason the costing wasn't identified. We do not recommend replacing the fence with the railing. We would recommend leaving it as is if you're going to do that, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it doesn't provide any security or issues related to ensuring that property boundaries are respected. The other issue is that several properties adjacent to the Casewood lot have put pools in, and pools require a chain link fence. So if we went in and put in the cedar fence, it could be that this year, if someone plans on putting a pool in, they're going to have to put a chain link fence then up as well, because that would be a requirement for fencing the yard. So we are not recommending that we replace it. We would recommend that if you are not going to erect a chain link fence, don't erect any fence at all, leave it as it is. We don't believe that expending the funding to replace this rail fence provides any additional security or advantage to any of the residents who are adjacent to the property, and we feel that we should just leave it alone. So if it's not going with chain link, don't go at all.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Downey. I guess a couple of things. So, you know, in the report it talks about a couple of issues with respect to why the fence is necessary, and one of them is delineating the municipal boundary, which has been done since the neighborhood was built in the 80s. I believe the developer put the fence up. So in my estimation, a post and rail fence, whatever it's called, the stuff that's there now does that just fine. I mean, it still delineates the line, and it clearly marks where the municipal boundary is or isn't. With respect to the security issue, I mean, these are municipal forests. I'm not sure if you can call it crown land or not, but I think the whole idea is you want to get people enjoying the forest, and so you restrict their access to certain points. I'm not sure if we have bylaws making sure that that's the case or not. I don't think we do. And so, to me, that seems like a bit of a, keeping people out of the forest when, we're trying to get people to go into the forest and enjoy the nature and everything else. I mean, if you're a bird watcher and you want to get into the woods in Casewood lot, you have to walk around now to the the back end of the street, enter through the trail system, and then go into the forest after that. So to me, that seems like a bit of overkill, because, I mean, one of the things that you talked about is dumping or, putting, grass clippings over the fence. Well, you can still do that over a chain link fence. It's not going to stop someone who's dumping their grass clippings. Well, you can do it over whatever. I mean, we're not putting barbed wire up, so... So to me, I just don't see why we have to move from chain link, or from what's there now to chain link. It would be my preference to put, if it needs to be replacing, to replace what's already there. You mentioned that there's some residents that border onto this Case woodlot that have chain link fences already, that already abut the fence, right? So to me, if someone wants to put a pool in, they would do the same thing that 6 people have already done. And so, I don't know, I just think if I lived in that area, and I've heard from people, it's just not something that's appealing to me to have owned property for many years and had a beautiful aesthetic backyard looking onto a Case woodlot with a nice post and rail fence, and to be subjected now to have a chain link fence in their backyard doesn't sit well with me. So if the only option is for a chain link fence, then I won't vote for it. Mr. Danny wants to respond.
Okay. I think Mr. Danny wants to respond.
If you might, I just want to make sure that there's some clarifications with regards to some issues that were discussed. The town actually does have a bylaw that prohibits people from entering from the rear yards into public property. So that's the purpose of the chain link fence. We do not permit gates from the private property into public property without the approval of council and the director. And the people who have put chain link fence up, some of them already have gates. So we're not recommending that we go in and enforce that at this point, but we want to make sure that we come in and at least delineate the lines, and there'll be no gates prevented in this fence. The other issue is that the fence today would go on fully into town property, so if there was any modification to this fence, that it would be trespassing on the part of the homeowner, and they would not be permitted to do so. The fence that they have on their property right now, the chain link fence they have on their property right now, is actually on their property. So the town has no right to make any amendments to their fence. So we're actually in some discussions right now for some of the residents as to, well, did you plan on taking our fence down when you're putting up the chain link fence? Why would you do that? And they have some concerns with regards to that. So there is some logic behind going forward with the chain link fence and going forward with delineation of the property boundary, that if you went and spent money putting up a cedar rail fence would not fix those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Councillor Tom's concern, but I think we have to look at it from the point of view that it's our obligation to ensure that we're managing our property rights. And I would suggest the only way we could properly do that is per Mr. Downey's suggestion, which is a chain link fence. And it certainly doesn't look as nice as a split rail fence. I understand that. But a split rail fence doesn't really do much to establish what the property line would be. So I would appreciate Councillor Tom's reticence to vote for it, but I will support the recommendation.
Any other comments, concerns? Councillor Tom?
Well, if the concern is that, then I mean, it's simply just a boundary, then certainly it can be anything else. The post rail fence still delineates the boundary of the town property. And town property, even though it's the town's, I guess, property rights, as you put it, Mr. Mayor, we work for the people. It's the people, they pay for this whole operation, and we want them to utilize and enjoy the public lands, just like the federal and provincial government with their crown land as well. So I guess if we're only concerned about property line delineation, then I just don't understand why we have to change from one to the other, but we'll see how it shakes down. Thanks.
Okay. Councilor Marcus, then Councilor Abel and Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I guess, to Mr. Downey. I just have one question. Are the residents allowed to enter the forested area from the front and just not from their backyard?
Through Mr. Chair, we have public access walkways going into the Case woodlot, and they're permitted to access through that, but they're not permitted to access directly from their property into the park.
So just as a follow-up, so the residents the taxpayers are allowed to enter into the forested area?
Correct, through a public walkway.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, I walk the trails, and I'm just trying to think, do we fence those trails? Say, in my area along Aurora Heights by Bathurst, there's a north-south trail system there, and other parks that we have, Tamarack Park, are those fenced, or those are private property fence those? In my mind, and I don't think the town puts a fence there. And if that's the case, can you explain to me what the difference is between the trail and that parkette as opposed to Case Woodlot?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in some of the earlier developments within the town, the fences were put on the private property as opposed to the public property, which made them the ownership of the homeowner. The homeowner could then do whatever they wish to that particular fence. The fencing nowadays goes totally onto town property, so that there can be no modifications done to that fence without the permission of the municipality. Most of the walkways, not all of our property, but well, actually I think it is all of our properties, quite frankly, have a fence between them, some type of fence. Not all chain link, but have a fence. And we feel that there needs to be some delineation of a boundary between public lands and private lands.
Thank you.
Councilor Perry?
I would only state that it's a bit of a slippery slope argument to say that because taxpayers ultimately own the town-owned lands, that they should be able to use it however they wish. We have ice rinks that are ultimately owned by the tax residents. That doesn't allow me to step onto the ice when the Tigers are playing, not just because of skill level. That's definitely part of it. We lock our buildings at night, even though our residents own those buildings. That's to ensure that they don't go into it at a certain time. We do set out rules and regulations on how things should be done to preserve them in the long run. And so if we were to allow people to access these trails from their back gates, does that alter the trails themselves? Does that alter the natural environment by creating footpaths and things of that nature? I think on a whole, there are ways to enter this woodlot. I know that York Region Forests have parking lots that you park at to enter them. We're just setting out some rules and regulations on how people access this parcel of land.
Councilor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Downey, and I apologize if this was asked while I was out of the room, but just going back to the notification to the residents, you indicated that all 23 were notified that this was the intent. What has been the response that you've received to date with regards to the change?
Mr. Downey?
Through Mr. Chair, it's actually identified on page 117. We've received 6 responses from the 23 residents that we had contacted. Many of them had already put up existing chain link fences, and their concern was that we would go in and put another chain link fence in front of their chain link fence, or tear their chain link fence down and put up another chain link fence. Our comment back to them was our intent was not to come in and impose regulations on them at this point, but rather to delineate the property. If we then wish to pursue an issue with regards to access to the park, we could do that. But that was not our intent, and we were not intending on tearing down their fence and putting up a chain link fence. The purpose behind this project was to replace a deteriorating fence with a new town standard, which is a chain link fence, to assist us in protecting the security of our property as well as theirs, and allowing them to move forward with any development they wanted on their property. The reason they put up a chain link fence is because they put a pool in and they had to put up a chain link fence.
Just as follows. So just to be clear, you didn't receive any comments back from residents opposing the idea?
We had no opposition to replacing the fence.
Councilor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sometimes issues seem so simple and they get so complicated. Mr. Downey, when you were talking about these 6 fences, no need to replace these particular fences, providing that the existing fence is deemed to be located correctly. Have we deemed that those fences are already located correctly? Mr.
Downey. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Part of the process is to ensure a survey is completed so that we can properly identify the property boundary. So we would do that as part of our process. And if we found that that fence, that chain link fence, was actually on their property, quite frankly, have no right to touch it. We then need to make a decision whether we wanted to put a chain link fence adjacent to their already existing one. And I'm not looking to cause trouble.
So this has potential to become quite complicated. The other thing you said that worries me is that we have a bylaw in place that prevents people from putting gates in their fences to enter, or exit. So if we just turn our heads and allow those gates to be there, and then the next person wants to put up a fence for their pool or for their security, and they put a gate in their fence, what do we do?
Mr. Downey?
To you, Mr. Chair, the difference between the issue at Case Woodlot is the fence, the new fence that we put up would be on our property. So if we found that there was a gate now installed in that, they would actually have been trespassed on the property in order to do so, and then we would be able to move forward with that. If they place a fence on their property with a gate in it, we have no way of enforcing that.
Thank you. And if we do nothing, then people can put up their fences with their gates, and we can't do anything about that anyway.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. That's why we feel that this existing fence serves really no purpose with regards to security or making sure that access from public lands to private lands or from private lands to public lands is maintained. So we're not recommending replacing it with a cedar fence. We wouldn't do it anywhere else.
Thank you, and I'm going to have to think about this for another week, but through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Van Leeuwen, with respect to bylaw, do we as a municipality have the opportunity to grandfather bylaws? So anything that's existing at the moment, as long as it's not a safety hazard, we can just say that's the way it is, but any new construction will have to be X, Y, and Z.
Ms. Hanlon?
Through you, Mr. Chair, typically there are some provisions contained within a bylaw that address existing situations. And typically the wording is such that if it was lawfully constructed prior to the enactment of the bylaw, it may remain or is considered to be legal conforming situation, and going forward they would require compliance with the bylaw.
Thank you. Follow up, and we do that with zoning issues, but can we do that with fence? Can we do that with anything?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it depends on the wording in the bylaw, so whatever wording is contained within the bylaw, we would have to review it and make that interpretation.
Thanks.
Anyone else would like to comment? Okay, so we'll put that to a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries, Mr. Clerk. Okay, the final item is 15. Again, Councillor Gardner. Would you like to...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move as is.
Okay, a second. Councillor Marcus.
I had a question a couple meetings ago, and it got late. So my question is, if we have a committee that's meeting and they produce a report, it comes to us, and we receive it for information. So that means, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Serio, we don't act on any of the recommendations. So what is actually happening here? Are these recommendations for staff? Actually, what is happening here, please?
Mr. Garvey? Through you, Mr. Chair. So this committee was tasked with dealing with the issues associated with the completion of the AFLC, and where appropriate, just take action to fix them, and where appropriate, if it would be a policy change or what have you, to report back to this council to make those decisions. So it is guiding, I guess, staff priorities. This committee was not designed to establish new policy, but rather to inform a process that this council could manage ongoing improvements to the facility.
Follow-up, Mr. Chair. So inform a process for staff and keep council in the loop, or to inform a process that council might also get involved with if we see things in here that we think need more than just receipt for information?
Mr. Garvey? Through you, Mr. Chair. Not entirely sure I understand the crux of the question. If you could rephrase it, perhaps that would be helpful.
I just don't understand I understand that I went to one of the committees, as others have, and it's a good conversation between staff and the liaison committee members, and a lot of things are getting done. But if things don't get done, then is it up to council to ensure they get done? If there are any repairs or issues left over on the list, or we just, as a council, just keep receiving it? Is there an end to this process? Will there be a report with what has not been accomplished and with direction to council?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we do, right at this point, we have one more a wrap-up meeting, so to speak. We're fairly confident that this coming Tuesday will be a final meeting. There might be one more in the fall. I might suggest there be one more just to close out some of the action items that are on the list. We try to, in that committee, try to work from, it's an opportunity to engage and educate as well. As you saw from some of the dialogue, there's points of disagreement, but all the issues would be summarized. I think that's the direction of this council, that a final report be presented to council. And I think for the vast majority, aside from the north entrance issue, there's been an understanding or acceptance of the process that was put forward to the liaison committee. Perhaps, if other people who attended, members of council who attended, can offer their perspective as well. But the intent is to wrap it up, to report back to council, and I think with the exception of the north entrance, I don't believe there's any outstanding policy issues that require council's attention.
Thank you. When will that wrap-up be? No, the wrap-up report, sorry?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would have to leave it to Mr. Simonovskis. I would likely suggest that the actions in the plan called for about a 16-week implementation. So I might suggest that in September there be a final closeout report, and if necessary, a liaison committee meeting to say, here's the status, we're 90% through, there's still 4 things that we've got in order, whatever that might be, and summarize them and report back in September probably, subject to Mr. Simonovskis and Mr. Downey's input on those issues.
I thank you. I kind of see some heads nodding. I see one head nodding over there. Is Mr. Downey's head nodding as well? Okay. Thanks.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll put that to a vote to receive for information. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes. Mr. Clerk?
Going to new business.
Okay, so we're going into new business, and I'll start from my right this time, Councillor.
Sorry, we actually had a matter that was referred to new business.
Oh, that's right.
The delegation. Yeah.
Okay, so we had a delegation.
Mr. Mayor.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to suggest that I would put a motion on the floor to ask Mr. Downey to look into those two issues and report back to council as soon as possible. And if there was a second for that.
Could you clarify the two issues?
Councillor Gardner? No, Councillor Morales?
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, I was asked to address the two issues. One is to look at allowing artifacts which are in the Aurora collection, which is controlled by the town, to be displayed in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and the other is to look at potential of relocating the Hockey Hall of Fame, which right now is on the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, which is currently on the third floor of Town Hall, to the SARC is their suggestion, but I would wait for Mr. Downey to come back with his suggestions.
Okay. Is Councillor Marcus seconding? Okay, seconding. Okay.
He has a question.
Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just possibly, maybe if we can, I don't know if we need to add this, but maybe if we could add, as far as relocating to the SARC, if we could also get back possible options. I don't know if Mr. Downey will do it that way, but possible options as far as constructing a new addition to it and stuff like that would be part of the relocation. Addition to the SARC. Well, I would like to see that as an option, possibly. I understand, but I mean, I think that I'd like to see that as an option, if that's possible.
I would turn that over to Mr. Downey. I think that's slightly more than a couple of weeks' worth of work.
Mr. Downey?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Whenever we have a footprint to a building, it's a little more complicated than that. So I was going to look at locations that already exist, and then the final option, quite frankly, would be if there is any new construction taking place, that consideration be given to the Sports Hall of Fame. So if there was an addition put to a building, or if we were contemplating new construction, that perhaps consideration be given. And that would be one of my final options presented to council, but I wasn't looking at moving forward with a capital project at this point, other than maybe upgrading an existing site.
Yeah, thank you.
If that's okay with council.
It's perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Rader?
Thank you, Councillor Kim. And just to follow up on Mr. Downey's comment, I remember when we were doing the leisure complex, that was an idea I had put forward, was to put in a little extra space for the Hall of Fame and for other sports organizations. So I'm glad to see that this council is thinking along those lines. Something temporary in a high traffic area such as the SARC. We look down those corridors, I think there's room to consider, and I'm looking forward to Mr. Downey's report coming back.
Mr. Downey, so just to add to Councillor Marcus's suggestion about adding footprint to the SARC, when the 2C lands are completed, we're going to have an extra 10,000 to 12,000 new residents. And I recall reading the Parks and Rec master plan, there was a certain ratio where it's recommended, it'd be a skating rink or swimming pool. At what point do we need another recreation center? Or are we not in need of one? And yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are presently, in fact, we just opened the bids for the new Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the consultant for the new Parks and Recreation Master Plan today, and we will be evaluating those and reporting to council very soon on the results of actually, I don't know that I will be reporting back because it'll be under our threshold, but we will be moving forward with a Parks and Recreation Master Plan for Aurora, and in that we will be hopefully identifying what is going to be required and when those things will be required as far as build-out goes. So I can't give you a date right now. I can tell you that we are having a pent-up demand, and we are going to be requiring additional facilities, but where and when and how large and what they're going to look like is going to be a discussion as part of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Councilor Gardner.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Downey, we do have that already in the current, although it's old now, Parks and Rec Master Plan. We have, I don't know, $12 million, $14 million in anticipation for something in 2016? Can you refresh my memory?
Certainly, development charges bylaw has identified the need for another community center. It hasn't identified what is going in that community center, but funds have been allocated for the construction of a new community center. And so that will be part of the discussion and part of the process with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan as to what would that facility footprint look like? Have we got sufficient funds to allocate it towards that, or do we need supplementary funding in order to build, to get to build out? The present Parks and Recreation Master Plan has not identified, based on service levels, a community center at this point. It has not.
And as a follow-up, just to be clear on what you said, we have been collecting development charges so far for a new facility of some kind.
So, Mr. Chair, that's correct. The development charges bylaw was passed 2 years ago? 2014. Yeah, 2 years ago, or 2014, identified funding to support another community center.
And again, for clarification, but we have been because it's in our current Parks and Rec Master Plan, we have been collecting all of these years development charges that will go towards a new something.
The Parks and Recreation Master Plan does not trigger our ability to collect funds. Only development charges and service levels that we've identified in the past allow us to collect funds for facilities. So even if the Parks and Recreation Master Plan said that we needed something greater than that, the development charges will only support to a service level, to an existing service level, I apologize, not to a proposed service level by a Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
Thank you. To be continued. Mr. Elliott, do you want to Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Elliott might want to add to that.
Mr. Elliott?
Both the towns, through you, Mr. Chair, both the town's 10-year capital plan and the DC background study have included provisions for and envisioned a new community facility of some sort. Again, the programming and the nature and the content and even its location is not specified. And as Mr. Downey says, that'll be coming forward as part of the master plan and trying to sort out location and perhaps content. We do know already, though, that because of the service level issue and the way the DC funding is calculated, it will not be providing likely near enough for what we envisioned for this new facility. And so we're going to be relying on perhaps some of these community contribution arrangements that we have with the development community now and other sources of funding, perhaps some grants.
Okay. So I'm just going to put this to the vote for our staff to report back regarding options for the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame for the location. All those for? Against? And that passes. Mr. Clerk. Other items of new business. Okay. So we're going to continue with new items in business. We'll go with Councillor Peary on my left. Do you have any? No. And Councillor Tom? Councillor Abel? No. Councilor Abel?
Mr. Chair, I just thought of something. I was driving up across the highway, and I often have welcome to Aurora signs. And I was going to say that we should have one in Aurora. And then I went up to Newmarket the other day, and I went north, and I saw a sign hidden in the intersection, so through you. Is that our welcome sign? Welcome to Aurora? Caught in that clover leaf? At Aurora Side Road. Well, I normally would envision it at Vandor Side Road, where everyone else would when you're entering the boundary. But it was like a here's a Where's Waldo sort of thing. I found it. And I might, just for clarification, that's what that sign is for?
Mr. Downey?
Mr. Chair, yes, my staff was responsible for installing that sign, and that was the location, that was the approved location by Ministry of Transportation as well as Council in the design, and that is the sign that says, "Welcome to Aurora," yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, why wouldn't we put it at the boundary like everyone else would? Why would you put it at the main intersection?
That was the only location we could approval from the Ministry of Transportation on.
I don't understand, because everywhere I travel in the ministry in Ontario, they have it at the beginning. On the highway, if you go down Highway 401, for example, every single town, Port Hope, Cobourg, Trenton, et cetera, has it before the interchange. Why is it that Aurora doesn't have it? Why did the ministry decide that? I'm just...
Through Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to pull some of the past reports and provide that information to members of council if they're interested. But it was quite a heated discussion with regards to the location, and then once again the design, and then ultimately the construction was also a bit of a challenge with regards to that particular sign.
I agree, it must have been a challenge. If there's a report that could come forward, maybe we could address it at that time. I would appreciate it. I don't know if it's proper for me to do it. It's a notice of motion or how it would be done, Mr. Chair.
I think Mr. Garvey had a comment through you, Mr. Chair. So there is a blue sign, like so the ministry places the blue signs. Yes. And there is one at Bloomington, I believe, on the east side at Bloomington. Then there was a motion that predated me, but through Economic Development Committee, that they install a landscape feature, a welcome landscape feature, which would be the town's responsibility. And as Mr. Downey said, the only location that was approved was at the Wellington Road / Aurora Road intersection, or off-ramp.
I would really like to see that report, how that all came about, because it just defies logic at this time.
Councilor Peter?
I'm just going to be difficult. The sign is actually in Richard Stouffville because it's on the right side of the highway. So it gives the indication that as you're getting off the highway, you're coming into Aurora. I think that's okay, even though it's technically in Richard Stouffville. It's kind of getting a little bit late. I'm just...
Mr. Chair, if I may, you can't see it when you exit the highway. The only way you see that sign is if you are coming across Wellington Road and are going in the Cloverleaf to go north into Newmarket on your way, then you see the sign. I've been going up that highway for 10 years. I never knew that sign was there. It's completely blocked by railings. You wouldn't even know it was there. We should have a contest to see if anyone can find it.
If there's no more comments, any other items of new business? Councilor Gardner, Councilor Marcus? No? Okay.
So we need... be in closed session after adjournment.
So we need a motion to reconvene closed session meeting after adjournment. Motion to, okay, Mayor Daw and Councilor Tom. Motion to...
Need to vote?
Okay. Everyone okay? Approval? Nay? Okay, that carries. Councilor Gardner, everyone, can we have attention, please? Okay. Motion to adjourn? Negative?
Hold on. I need a mover, I need a seconder.
Okay, Councilor Marcus, Gardner.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Opposed?
Opposed? I mean, I'm not opposed. Thank you.